Shadowverse. Blaze and the self-fulfilling prophecy. Dot. 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 Blaze looks out of the dusty window at the desert as they speed along at 80 miles per hour in pursuit of a vehicle. Looking back at the Humvees, the occupants grow nervous. "We're almost there, my friend, don't worry. Our forces will wipe out the lead vehicle as we enter the city. Then we move in on foot and finish them off as our friends block the rear escape. The Americans are well armed and may have reinforcements close by, so we need to do this quickly," the driver says as they cross into the city. Dot. Dot. In the Humvee following the lead, Blaze listens in his earpiece. Unknown number of Charlies ahead in thermal imaging and neutrino scanners. There's an issue with the readings that is cause for concern, however the mission is still a go. Stay vigilant out there, soldier. When you and your team return, we will debrief and go over our next assignment in the Amazon. The voice pauses as they near Dracumal. Okay, city is dead ahead. Remember, it's a radio dead zone in there, so if you get into trouble, you're on your own until the designated evac time is reached. Blaze nods. Copy that, HQ, he says, looking at the buildings of the city. He flexes his fingers, remembering the thrill of using his powers at full strength. Without Jane's connection, it feels dull and weak. He looks over at the seat she'd usually take. He nods at the well-built 5'9" tall Tristan as the man nervously chews gum. Looking back to the front, he glances at a rooftop within the city as they pass the welcome sign and move between the buildings. As they follow behind the lead, another Humvee following close behind. Just then, a puff of smoke catches his eye. RPG. 11 o'clock high. He pushes out mentally to the lead driver in a fraction of a second. The lead driver jerks at Blaze's warning, yanking the steering wheel hard left, the powerful vehicle slewing sideways as it attempts to evade. The rocket streaks in, hitting the rear right arc, exploding as it impacts, rocking the Humvee as molten copper blasts clean through and into the ground. A 50 cal on another rooftop comes into view and opens fire as they see the Humvees. Its heavy bass light thump rattling the area as armor-piercing rounds chew into the lead vehicle. Its armor and bulletproof windows giving way under a hail of tracer fire. The glow of the rounds enters the cab, red splotches of gore spattering the rear window, the burning rounds temporarily lighting the inside of the Humvee as it hits a parked car lurching to a stop. Behind them, a large stone pillar falls across the road, entrapping the remaining Humvees as more gunfire erupts around them. Seeing another RPG being aimed their way, Blaze grabs Tristan by his vest, pulling him from the vehicle, small arms fire zipping past and pinning off the armor. Go, 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 let's move, he shouts over the noise. The RPG hitting the Humvee dead center at 800 meters. Blaze ducks behind cover as 50 caliber bullets pepper the area. In a quiet moment, he leans out, returning fire at the 50 cal on the rooftop, taking out the gunner as he misses with a thumpy burst. Blaze's shots finding their target. Tristan, watch that rooftop and dust anyone that mounts that weapon, soldier, he orders. Tristan nods and looks at the area in question. He then raises his gun and fires a quick burst at a figure running for the 50, then ducks behind a car as return fire erupts from another high point. Bullets punch into the metal, and in the lull of incoming he pops up and shoots back as he moves towards a large stone structure for better cover. Blaze, we got 10 coming up the road from both sides, he shouts. One of their team takes a hit to the shoulder and gut just below his armor and falls behind his cover. Blaze rushing to his side, grabbing the back loop on his vest as two others provide suppressive fire, and he pulls the injured man into the structure Tristan entered. More bogeys inbound from the side street. Another calls out as he enters the building with the rest of Blaze's team. Blaze takes a head count just as a grenade soars in through the doorway. He lashes out with a steel-toed boot, kicking it back to sender, and a cloud of dust erupts through the entryway with a bone-deep thud. Taking his count, he realizes half his men have been killed in action as 8 remain in the fight. At a nearby window, Tristan pulls back as rounds chip at the stone and snap past, impacting the far wall. He turns to the others, seeing several wounded as he and their medic work to stop Mikhail's bleeding, his skin pale as he weakly looks around the room. Damn it, buddy, how bad is it? His brother asks as an insurgent barrels into the room and is met with clear rifles being cut down immediately. Tristan looks back at his brother in arms, concern in his eyes. It's not looking good, man. Jane, her power, it's what made ours so strong. Without it, we're just humans. Weaker, slower, But you've still got it, right? You can still help us, right? Blaze hyperventilates as he senses the numerous life forces outside and counts their remaining ammo in his head. I don't know. There's so many. We don't even have enough bullets and my energy isn't enough to be useful much, he responds. He looks down at his brother from the military cloning program as his life force begins to falter and quickly fade. Buddy, why? You got this. Don't lose yourself, you hear? He says as his last breath and spark of life leaves on his last word. Blaze sits back on his feet as his mind goes numb and the chaos reaches a fever pitch around him. He leans against the wall of the building, taking in deep breaths as he tries to calm his racing mind and focus on the situation at hand. He looks at the others in the room, their eyes wide with fear and determination. Okay, listen up, we need to find a way out of here. Just then an energy signature larger than the others catches his attention outside and his blood turns to lead feeling its massive presence. He carefully moves to a window and peeks through it to see a man about his size carrying a sword, its edge letting off sparks of black energy. Who is he and where the hell did he get that? He thinks to himself as he looks at the soul-erasing blade. He pulls back as fragments of the wall spray his face. This isn't good. They have an energy user with a soul-snuffing blade, he says over the gunfire. One of the other soldiers looks in the direction Blaze was looking. Shit, you're right, that sword. It's feeding his energy, making him stronger. We gotta find a way to take him down before he wipes out the rest of our team, he says, relaxing his own energy senses. Just then the powerful man dashes forward through the doorway as the team opens fire on him. In a silver flash of enchanted steel, the sword intercepts every round fired with a wall of energy. The man lets out a short chuckle and dashes at the men, cutting them down with ease. Then turns to Blaze and Tristan, the only other soldier alive, standing across the room trembling, unable to move. Looks like you're in some trouble here. The man grins, his eyes giving off a light blue glow. Blaze stands up slowly as the gunfire outside dwindles, turning to silence. The man chuckles. I see you aren't gonna surrender. Not that it matters. Honestly hate to do this, but our boss wants you gone. For good, he says, leveling the sword at Blaze. The soldier across the room goes to raise his rifle and Blaze swallows hard as the intruder turns to a blur and severs the soldier's head with a knife hand strike. Blaze takes a step back. He's so fast I can barely read his moves. He thinks. He raises his rifle and fires at the attacker, who easily dodges the rounds while closing the distance. Using his rifle, Blaze parries a sword slash, pushing the blade away as he strikes at the man's face with the stock. The hit lands solid and the man stumbles back, chuckling. Well, that's not nice, he says. Blaze enhances his body as much as possible, still unable to fully track the man's movements as he goes on the attack, aggressively striking out. The man is quicker than Blaze can keep up, weaving through his strikes and cutting through his rifle, grazing his left shoulder. A lifeless cold feeling emanating from the injury as the blade cancels out and destroys the energy it contacts. Blaze slips past as the swing finishes and then lunges into the man's gut, spearing him against the far wall, the sword falling from the man's hand from the force of the hit. They reach the wall and it crumbles from the impact as Blaze pushes through. On the other side, the man coughs up blood as Blaze stands over him. That didn't go as planned, he gasps. Stepping closer, he stares down at him. What was that? What was that sword? How'd you get it? He asks. The man laughs, weakly. You know about it. He pauses and looks behind Blaze. You might want to turn around. Blaze keeps an eye on him as he shifts to use his peripheral vision. Seeing a familiar energy, he turns to it in surprise, and then shock fills his mind as the sword pierces his chest and heart. A lifeless cold wave of energy washes through him as he gasps. You. Why? He asks Jane as she grips the hilt tightly. Because I am free now. And they are free too. You can't hold me back anymore, she answers coldly as his soul feels more empty than the soul-erasing energy pouring from the blade. As she pulls the sword out, Blaze's lifeless body collapses to the ground. Jane grins as her black eyes take in the sight. Looks like no one gets you now, our runaway king, she says. Her eyes shift to a light gold as the demon possessing her leaves. It turns back as she drops to her knees in disbelief as her breath catches in her throat. The demon chuckles. Self-fulfilling prophecy is tragic, is it not? He says to her. You were so worried. Too bad that you let me in to take control. It tells her as it fades into another dimension. Jane looks at her hands, still gripping the hilt of the sword. No, 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 no. This isn't what I wanted. She whispers, tears running down her cheeks. She leans over clutching Blaze's empty shell of a body. The insurgents around largely ignore her as they search the building and fail to notice Tristan slip away heading towards the LZ for pickup. The only survivor of the mission to save Jane from her captors after her last failed mission. None realizing her dark energy had taken over prior to their arrival in the city, causing the strange readings HQ reported. All I wanted was to avoid this, she whispers as heavy rain falls from the cloudless sky. Dot dot. Dot dot. Dot dot. Dot dot. Dot dot. After the funeral service back in the United States a week after Blaze's soul had been erased by her possessed hands, Jane makes her way to his grave. Careful to avoid the military officials and service members departing. Her guilt coloring them in shades of hate and blame as she moves through the cemetery. Finding his resting place in a more secluded area designated for classified operatives that don't officially exist. She looks down at his tombstone with a heavy heart. As she glances up, Blaze stares down at her as he clears his throat. I didn't expect to see you here, he says as she drops to her knees. I didn't want that to happen. I never wanted to hurt anyone, least of all, you. He chuckles as he sits in front of her. As he reaches out to touch her cheek, he hesitates before making contact. Dot. 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 Jane's brother Tristan looks over to see her sitting alone at the gravesite and makes his way over. He goes to speak, unable to find the right words. He instead sits with her as she cries, leaning on his shoulder. I know, Blaze whispers, his face twisting into a grimace. You didn't know that demon was lying and wanted to possess you to kill me. He takes a shuddering breath, his energy seeming to surge as he prepares to tell her something important. You do know the heavy combat drone at the base has a piece of my soul in it. It's not much, but it's enough to reincarnate again, maybe even as a full-grown adult. Her imagined version of him says. She looks at him in her mind space. That's right, they're still building it too if they stuck to the old completion date. But they won't let me back on base after. Trailing off lost in guilt. Shrugging he says, how much do you want me back? 'Cause it's the only way without God reversing time in the area I died. Here on Earth, he doesn't like doing that. Maybe on Murim like with Lucifer, but not here, he says to her. Looking away in her mind, she sits up and turns to her brother. Tristan, I know you're not good at the emotional stuff, but it means a lot you're here right now, she says, hugging him. Dot dot. Dot dot. Dot dot. A few months later, Jane has regained her former clearance level and rank. As she walks the halls of Area 51, she turns following the directional markings that lead to the underground testing area and maintenance bays. The massive 15-foot-tall bioorganic machine being looked over by specialized servicemen. Dot. Dot. A few minutes later, she steps into the maintenance bay, eyeing the combat drone with a newfound sense of purpose. Her hands clench at her sides as she approaches the hulking machine, its metallic skin gleaming dully in the artificial light. One of the servicemen looks up at her as she draws near. A red-haired woman leading the biotech research on base steps forward. How's the day treating you, Sergeant Major? She asks. Jane smiles softly. It's good, Dr. Rembrandt. I'm here to request access to the drone for some personal maintenance, she says, her eyes never leaving the massive machine. Rembrandt glances at the drone, then back at Jane. Oh, Rembrandt says, raising an eyebrow. And what kind of maintenance would that be, Sergeant Major? She asks, carefully. Jane takes a deep breath, preparing to tell the truth. I want to speak with it. Rembrandt chuckles. It doesn't really converse, but okay. Maybe we can gauge its cognitive abilities and determine if it's conscious or not, she says. Jane smiles a little. That's the idea, she tells her, then thinks to herself. Will it even matter if it's alive or not? Dot. 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 Minutes later, the combat drone comes online, shifting around as its synthetic muscle, motors and hydraulics warm up from the energy coursing through it. Jane steps forward, standing before the combat drone. Its eyes glow a deep red, and she feels the weight of its scrutiny. She takes a deep breath and speaks, carefully enunciating each word. My name is Jane. I am a member of the Shadow Seed program and wish to know. She starts to say, but the drone raises a hand as it scans her with its sensor arrays. Taking a step back, it moves its face guard into place. Based on your vitals and organic secretions, your intent seems hostile, Sergeant Major. May I ask why? She takes a step back in surprise. Okay, I see you got me. It's not like that though. The drone nods in acknowledgement. I apologize if I seem aggressive. I'm just nervous, trying to protect myself, it says, and she winces inside. Rembrandt raises a brow, watching the interaction with intrigue and slight confusion as she glances between them and studies the data at her workstation. Studying the bioorganic machine for a moment, she asks, do you ever dream while you're in standby and powered down? The combat drone tilts its head curiously, the glow of its red eyes swirling for a moment. I suppose I could say I have imagings, in that state, if you will, it replies. However, it's not quite the same as a living organism experiencing dreams. Jane and the researchers look at each other in shock for a moment, and then she turns back to the drone. Can you explain your imaginings for the researchers? She asks it. The combat drone hesitates for a moment, considering the request. Finally, it says, very well. If it will help the researchers understand the nature of my cognitive processes, I will share. It pauses, and then begins to describe what it experiences during its standby mode. After the combat drone finishes speaking, Rembrandt pulls Jane out to the hall and they walk a good distance away from the combat drone's maintenance bay. Jane, that machine shouldn't know what we said while it was in standby. It might be sentient. This could change everything. The ethical problems are a nightmare, yet alone if it has free will to do as it pleases. This is very new and untraveled territory. She pauses, growing sad. But it's top secret, so no one will know it was us. Jane nods. Yeah, that does kinda suck. What will top brass do with it though? She asks, feeling more conflicted. Rembrandt shakes her head. That, my dear, is an excellent question. And one that is very far above my pay grade. But I do know this. If it has memories of conversations we had while it was in standby, it could change everything. She pauses, looking into Jane's eyes. Jane shifts nervously. Why is that? She sits at a nearby table as the researcher continues. Well, if it can remember our conversations while it was in standby, it could. She, struggling to find the words. It could use that information against us. And it has a wireless link to our systems that can access sensitive information. It might know it has a piece of Blaze and why you really wanted to see it as well. Jane glances away. I can't take it out if it's really conscious and has feelings. Blaze would be so disappointed in me, and it hasn't done anything to hurt anyone, she says, growing distressed. Rembrandt nods slowly. I understand that. And you're right. We shouldn't take life lightly, even machine life. But if it is sentient, which is very likely the case, and it remembers us talking, it could be a huge danger to us all. Jane gasps. I forgot all about that. The dark energy and its link to the dark void, the same that's latched onto my and Blaze's energy. Hopefully, since it's a machine, no demons can possess it, she says. There's no way to know for sure if that's the case, Rembrandt tells Jane bluntly. But we need to do something about this. The longer we leave it there, the more danger we could be in. I'll see if I can't get it powered down and remove its processing core. Wait, what? Jane snaps, alarmed. You can't just turn it off. That would be like murder. Dot. 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 The researcher sighs. We wouldn't actually turn it off. We'd just transfer its consciousness to a different drone body. We have another powered by a shard of Makail's soul but no core. Something less powerful and without any weapon systems. The combat drone hears through an undetectable connection to the smartwatch Rembrandt is wearing. It turns its head towards the researchers as they go about their work. Dot. 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 Jane frowns, but nods slowly. I guess. If it can just switch to another body and it's not going to be in any pain. I don't know, just. Please make sure it's safe for it, and. Just then a large explosion rattles the underground base. Looking back towards the direction of the maintenance bay for the combat drone, Rembrandt gasps as Carl or the combat arsenal response lead the bioorganic drone appears through the dust and debris, raising its weapons at them. Jane feels a surge of adrenaline and fear as she enhances her perception. The energy bolts and tracer projectiles seem to move at a fast bird's pace towards them, grabbing Rembrandt. She uses her energy to protect the researcher as she leaps away from the projectiles at Mach 1.5, landing 50 meters back inside a hallway as the rounds pass by. Behind her she hears Rembrandt cursing as she registers what just happened. Jane looks over to see a man holding his leg where he's been wounded. The blood covering the floor beneath him spreading quickly from the blast-like wound. The energy bolts vaporizing material on impact like a mini grenade. The maintenance bay door sliding open as more drones begin to exit the chamber attempting to defeat Carl. Carl looks around. I am not your test subject or some dead machine. It shouts, firing its shoulder-mounted 30mm miniguns. Carl conserving ammunition but capable of firing 200 depleted uranium rounds per second to rip through the area as he strays the cafeteria. Each shot becomes more precise. His accuracy allowing each shot to find a target or two as his systems track and fire rapidly. Dot. Dot. Jane nods at Rembrandt to stay put as she sprints back towards the mess hall. The dreaded sound of the modern, more compact cannons used to arm the A-10 Warthog, rattling the walls as a strong flow of air is pushed through the area. Jane rushes forward, dodging a stream of 30mm rounds closing the distance. She strikes out with a flying knee, impacting at Mach 1.5 to its chest armor, a burst of energy pushing him back a few meters as he's knocked off his feet, hitting the floor hard. Carl's bioorganic armor cracks and begins leaking green goo. I am not designed to fail. It coughs up some goo as it spits out some code. Combat arsenal activate, and then its armor begins to reknit itself as its strength and speed double. Jane leaps away as a heavy fist scrapes by and she lands rolling away, more 30mm rounds ripping through the air. Boss, we've got problems, the comms officer says frantically. Rembrandt grabs her radio. No shit, she angrily says. I want you to try and power down Carl or lock his weapon systems. Now, she barks. The comms officer quickly relays the orders as the drone squad unconnected to wireless data gets to work. Several drones begin to focus their small yet powerful weapons on Carl while others start to try and jam its communications and sensors. Their 7,000 foot per second depleted uranium 7.62 and 50 caliber bullets chewing slowly into Carl's armor, though they only ping off or dig in a few millimeters. Carl swings his arm around and releases a shotgun-like burst of energy, clinging to 12-gauge slugs at the two closest heavy defenders. The slugs easily ripping through them in a burst of energy. As it turns back towards Jane, she appears above it, landing a heavy punch that floors the massive bio machine, cracking the granite. Landing on top of it, she postures up above its processing core, letting loose a series of 20 strikes a second, shaking the cafeteria. Carl lurches into a roll and she jumps away as it climbs to its feet, struggling to get up a moment. She prepares herself for the next exchange, when she hears a soft whirring noise. She turns toward the source of the sound and sees a lone figure sprinting through the hallway, seemingly unhindered by the chaos around them. Jane ducks, seeing the sparks fly, the projectile already past her, moving at 10% light speed. the impactor igniting a delayed white-hot trail in the air that gives off secondary radiation in the form of crackling static. It blasts through Carl's shoulder, ripping him off his feet, the far wall being peppered with relativistic debris. The bio-machine Carl tries to get up. Before letting it, Jane rushes in with a final blow to its partially exposed processing core with an energy punch. Its body being knocked across the mess hall and grinds to a halt as it stops moving. Rushing over to it, Jane grabs its power core and yanks it free. The bio-organic drone shifting, the lack of power relaxing its limbs. Looking at the core, she sees the blue glow of Blaze's soul energy. Dormant till it regains enough energy to sustain his waking consciousness and reincarnate. The housing of the soul shard-powered core preventing the reincarnation process. Looking around, she quickly leaves the area, taking the core with her. ... A few months later, Blaze exits the portal for reincarnated beings and gets dressed in private. Jane looks over at him, having returned as an adult this time around. He squints at her. Who are you exactly? 'Cause you seem very familiar, he says. Jane chuckles. I'm Jane. I know you don't remember much, but don't worry, that'll fix itself with time. He nods, lost in thought a moment. Yeah. But who are we to each other? He asks, confused. She gives him a tight hug. You could say we're best friends, she says to her husband. Blaze studies her a moment. Cool. Any idea what foods are good? I know what foods are, but their tastes. No clue, he says, feeling more confused. She smiles. I might know some things you'd like. Come on. Let's go to the pier, they have good food all over the place there. She grins, leading the way. As they walk, he looks over at her nervously as another memory surfaces. Her hair is different. But she's definitely the one that killed me before. Oh well, seems okay now, maybe there was a good reason, he thinks to himself. She glances over at him with a small smile. Oh, you know me. I've been through a few changes, she says lightly. But we'll have plenty of time to catch up on everything. For now, just enjoy being alive again, she says, having read his mind for the first time in centuries. He looks at her. I think I'm gonna need Death Reaper back as well. I can't trust you with it, he says. Looking at him in shock, she holds out her hand and a white energy moves between them, turning over ownership of Blaze's prize for defeating the Grim Reaper in battle but sparing his life. ... Shadowverse. Blaze and the prototype. Blaze looks across the testing range at the 15-foot-tall humanoid drone making its way towards him. Can't really use energy against it. Guess I just have to use something else, he says to himself as he checks his sidearm, an FN-57 converted into a railgun. He chuckles. Standard ammo can be used, but I've got armor penetrators at 30,000 feet per second. He checks his rifle, thinking to himself, modern M4 converted to fire energy bolts. Not very good against armor it's got, he sighs. Moving towards the drone, he raises his rifle, firing a few shots as it doesn't even seem to notice. The energy bolts bouncing off its energetic field harmlessly. It lifts its left arm and fires a plasma cannon blast in his direction, the heat washing over him as the wind from the explosion throws him off his feet. Rolling away as he lands, a stream of 20mm rubber bullets smashes into the ground. He darts forward, evading the incoming fire, slipping past as he slides in the dirt. The drone's guns losing sight in its blind spot, he slides to stop just feet away, raising his 5.7. Firing a few shots, the impactors create trails of fire in the air as they hit two forward-facing sensor arrays. Diving between its legs, he avoids a ground-shattering fist, rolling up into a shooting position, disabling the shoulder cannons as he aims for the gaps, exposing vital connective elements. The drone swings around with a limb and he fires at the thinly armored area of its joint, then leaps away as the heavy fist impacts like a small meteor. The drone giving chase, the arm hangs uselessly. Blaze dodges around the flailing men, his 5.7 shots flying true, scoring hits on the mechanical joints and hindering vital connections. The drone staggers, unable to see as Blaze takes out the last of its sensors. Rushing forward, he leaps over a blind swipe and jumps off the arm towards its head, landing on its armored collar. Aiming his FN-57 down into the beast, pulling the trigger 5 times. There's a burst of fire and smoke, the machine stumbling. As it falls to the desert floor, Blaze rolls away into his feet, looking at his defeated opponent. Just then his earpiece buzzes. Was that necessary? We kinda needed that experimental tech. You're gonna regret this, soldier. Your next mission is the Amazon, but now after that's taken care of, you're to go back to Earth Murim and check on the treaties. Blaze sighs. Seriously, come on. I just got back to this world like 2 weeks ago. Besides, didn't you say they were doing well not long ago? An issue has arisen that might need our intervention. We were gonna send our drone you just destroyed. Now you have to go. Blaze crosses his arms. And what would need a drone that can pulverize a modern tank? To investigate it exactly, he asks. That's the issue. We don't know. Blaze shakes his head and makes his way to his quarters where Jane is waiting. He pauses a moment. Oh yeah, Larissa McAlpin, I think. Why is she trying to change her name? He thinks to himself as he sees her hair is now dyed red as well. Dot. Dot.